Hi folks, in this video I hope to dispel an old travel joke related to the Canadian prairies. That old joke goes something like this. When you arrive by vehicle on the Canadian prairies, you put the pedal to the metal and get across as fast as possible because the prairies are so boring. Well, personally, I reject that old saying. There are many fabulous natural features to stop and admire when traveling across the Canadian prairies. In this video, I will share one such natural feature named the Great Sandhills, located in Saskatchewan. I hope to raise your curiosity about the Great Sandhills, encourage you to slow down, and stop to visit the sandy area as you travel through Saskatchewan. Now, as you might expect, because I am a geologist by training, the Great Sandhills appeal to me because it tells part of the geological story about the formation of the land we now call Saskatchewan, Canada. I hope this video helps to dispel that old travel joke by sharing with you some of the beauty of the Great Sandhills area. More such natural land features will follow in future videos, so stay tuned for those. Enjoy! Perhaps it comes as a surprise that parts of Saskatchewan are very sandy and even have active sand dunes. For that reason, the first dramatic natural land feature I highlight is called the Great Sandhills, located in southwestern Saskatchewan. The Sandhills are located about 50 kilometers or 30 miles southeast of the town of Leader and about 20 kilometers or 12 miles south of the village of Sceptre. I read that this is among the larger areas of active sand dunes in Canada. It is also an area that was revered by the First Nation people who lived in and adjacent to this area for thousands of years. The Great Sandhills area consists of relatively flat sand plains and dramatic sand dunes that rise above the surrounding sand plains. Because of its ecological importance, the Great Sandhills area is protected within the Great Sandhills Ecological Reserve. The sand is fine, having the consistency of flour, and if you were parachuted here without any sense of the surrounding landscape, you might think you had landed in a desert, or that you were standing in a giant sandbox in the middle of grasslands and farm country. Some of the sand dunes are active, meaning they are moving today, pushed along by the prevailing winds from the west. On our summer 2023 trip, we stayed at the Sceptre Municipal Campground. It is an efficient area with 6 campsites, having electrical outlets, and water is available at the 2-room washroom. During past visits to the area, we also visited the Great Sandhills Museum and Interpretive Center, located in the village of Sceptre. It has a wealth of information about the life of the region and the natural history of the area. In case you've never seen sand dunes before, this is what they look like when seen from a Google Earth satellite image. The red arrow points to sand dunes that are parabolic in shape, a bit like an open horseshoe. In this area, the prevailing winds blow from west to east, and that is why the parabolic-shaped sand dunes are open to the west and closed towards the east. The sand dunes have been around for quite a while, and their origin is complicated, so I will only touch on a few highlights of their origin in this video. We can sum up the recent geological history of Saskatchewan in one word: Ice Age glaciers. Specifically, during the last Ice Age, which geologists call the Wisconsin glacial episode, almost all of Canada was covered by an ice sheet. About 12,000 years ago, the ice sheet started to melt back during a process geologists call glacial retreat. The ice sheet left huge piles of sandy debris, glacial till, and moraines covering the land. Meltwater lakes and rivers were created. Sandy deltas and sandy deposits formed on the bottom and edges of the meltwater lakes. Think of this photo as a model of that part of the history. Clay and rocky till material accumulated at the bottom of the ice sheet, labeled A. Once the ice sheet started to melt, a meltwater river, labeled B in this image, formed, and where that meltwater river flowed into the lake, it created a delta, labeled C, which was built up of sandy material, labeled D. The delta started to cover the rocky bottom of the lake, labeled A. Once the ice sheet completely melted, or the meltwater lake drained away, the exposed delta sands, labeled C, also started to dry out. Once dry, the strong prevailing winds started to blow the sands around to form the sand dunes that we see today. Now, this is a very simple explanation that describes the history that began about 12,000 years ago at the end of the Ice Age, when the sands left behind by the ice sheet started to dry and eventually formed the Great Sandhills and its sand dunes. The ecology of the Great Sandhills is also far too complex to address in this video, but I'll touch on a few highlights. The Great Sandhills are home to numerous species of birds, plants, and other animals. And if you visit the town of Leader, you can see many sculptures that depict the natural wildlife found in this area. The area supports at least 215 plant species, including the hairy false golden aster, 70 bird species, including the common nighthawk, 19 mammal species, including Ord's kangaroo rat, which is an endangered species in Canada. Now, because it is nocturnal and I did not see any in the wild, all I can show is a sculpture of the rat, which is on display in the town of Leader. Pronghorn antelope also occur in the area, although this video was composed west of the town of Leader and is not from the Great Sandhills area. While visiting the Great Sandhills, you should also take a look at the Boot Hill display, located on the sand dune overlooking the parking lot. It is a tribute dedicated to John Booth, who was a rancher, caretaker of the Sandhills Stockmen's Association, and lover and protector of the Great Sandhills area. If you do visit the Great Sandhills, imagine how much different the land would have looked 15 to 10,000 years ago, when you would have been standing on the edge of a melting ice sheet and a large glacial meltwater lake. Then reflect on the sand dunes that were forming after the glacial lake dried up, when the winds blew the dry sands into sand dunes, some of which are still active today. It is quite a spectacular natural landscape feature. Armed with this simple understanding about the formation of the Great Sandhills, I want to leave you with a few insights related to the plants that grow on the Great Sandhills, as seen through the eyes of a geologist. We ask, why is this such a harsh habitat for vegetation? Well, there are several characteristics of the sand dune habitat that contribute to the harsh growing conditions. In the summer, solar radiation is very intense, both direct from the sun and reflected back off the sand. In the winter, the very harsh winds blow across the open landscape, creating conditions that only the strongest can survive. The winds blow the sand grains, which are capable of literally sandblasting exposed vegetation. That wind also moves the sand, creating a very unstable ground surface, which can bury exposed vegetation not adapted to these conditions. And finally, the sand is composed largely of very fine sand, and sand does not contain essential plant nutrients. In addition, that sand substrate does not retain moisture, making it difficult for moisture-loving plants to survive. Together, these geological and climatic conditions make the Great Sandhills a very harsh habitat for all but those that are the most specially adapted for these conditions. That includes mammals, insects, birds, and plants. With this more complete understanding of the Great Sandhills, I leave you with some images of a few of the plants that I saw growing on the Great Sandhills, Saskatchewan, Canada. In this video, I highlighted one natural and fascinating land feature located in Saskatchewan, Canada that is worthy of a visit, the Great Sandhills. I also briefly touched on some of the ecological characteristics of the Great Sandhills. In future videos, I will share some more natural features of Saskatchewan for you to consider visiting when traveling through Saskatchewan. Clearly, that pedal-to-the-metal travel joke is in poor taste and must have been created by someone who did not take the time to stop, look around, and enjoy what the province of Saskatchewan has to offer. So, this draws this video to a close. Thanks for watching. Please consider liking and commenting on the video if you found something new or of interest. Bye for now.